Hey guys, and welcome back to the Natty scene. We are joined by Lucy and Michelle this evening, and Lee is back on the podcast as well. So we have four of us tonight, again in a similar style to the podcast with Stu and Damo. We're going to sort of just be casually interviewing Michelle and Lucy, talking a little bit more about their bodybuilding journey. And I think this one will be great for obviously the female viewers. We do have a good amount of female viewers. It is upsetting on my Instagram because I do have, and I know I have an 85% male dominant following. So when it comes to like putting out questions and things like that, I definitely get less interaction, which is a shame because you guys are killing it just as much as any male out there. And I love that. And I personally love both of your physiques, and I've been following you for a long, long time, as you both know. I take inspiration the same from you guys as I do from anyone else. So yeah, we're gonna hopefully open a few of you guys' eyes as to how Michelle and Lucy train, diet, compete, and their opinions on the sport. So first of all, I'd like to just start the discussion, fairly basically with a little bit of a background into you guys, a little bit more about yourself, not necessarily how you got into bodybuilding, just who you are, what you do, yeah, that's pretty much where I want to start. So Lucy, if you want to take the helm, you can start with who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
So currently I am a self-employed personal trainer, first and foremost. So I work at a gym called Exchange Fitness in Hitching, which is where I do all my one-to-one PT sessions. I also do less so, but I still do competition prep clients online. Posing coaching, I do groups and one-to-one posing coaching. And I am also a sports therapist, so I also do sports massage, and I do that at my home as well, obviously prior to lockdown. But I got into it pretty late, so I only got qualified as a PT in 2007. And before that, I was cabin crew for EasyJet for 7.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, prior to that, I was a holiday rep in the Costa del Sol. And prior to that, I was a Butlins Redcoat for several seasons. So yes, it took me a long time to decide that fitness and that this was what I wanted to do. Even when I got qualified as a personal trainer, I didn't really do much personal training. I actually got into gym management, so I ended up managing gyms for several years before I came back to PT. And I actually ended up working for a company called Easy Gym, which is the same company or franchise of or branch of EasyJet, or was. It doesn't exist anymore really, but I ended up working for them. So something about orange clearly appeals, and also now my flat is mostly orange as well. Don't know what that's all about. Yeah, so that's a bit about what I do now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lucy. And Michelle, a little bit of a background on you.
Yeah, so I work for a international financial institution in the city. I'm a fund administrator, and I have a 18-year-old son at home, and I got into bodybuilding in 2016. I just so happened upon it. It wasn't intentional because I've always done some form of sports. I did martial arts for 13 years and got to third dan with Tang Sudo karate. Remember going to Malta, competing, pulling both my hamstrings, coming back to the UK and thinking, my God, I need to do something else because this here is not good. So I started having physiotherapy and then just started looking a little bit more at my lifestyle. So started going to the gym, and then my gym sessions started taking over from my karate classes. And before I knew it, I was living in the gym, like literally getting up at 4:45 in the morning, being the first person outside the door, like 5:45, leaving my son at home asleep in bed while I'm doing a quick hour of training and getting back home ready to get him up for school and ready and take him off to school and do the school run, etc. And then, I started going to the gym a lot more, and then wanted to do something that challenged me and decided to do a bodybuilding show. Hadn't been to one, didn't know what it was about, but saw a friend go for it and thought, do you know what, I wonder if I could do that. And just questioned myself about, whether I really want to be standing on the stage in a bikini, and a whole load of things was going through my mind. But yeah, I did my first show in 2016.
Awesome. So am I right in saying, Lucy, as well, from a competitive standpoint, that you got into bodybuilding itself and getting on stage at a later point in your training career as well? Like, you trained with weights for a while before you'd stepped on stage, or am I incorrect? Did you step on stage when you were younger in your training?
Not a lot of people know this about me, and it'll probably come as quite a surprise. But so I was working for EasyJet, and I realised I was getting a little bit fat. Crew food is never the best. I was eating things like muffins for lunch, and all the nice things that we got given as crew, cheese and pickle sandwiches, that sort of thing. I wasn't doing any training at all at this point, not an ounce. And by this point, I'm in like my mid-20s, and so at one point I realised I was getting a little bit chubby, and I thought I need to do something about this. So I started going running, and that was pretty much it. That was a form of exercise, and I would run and run and run, and then go to work, and then run and run and run, and that was literally all I was doing. And then I got injured running, so I hurt my knee quite badly, and I thought, I can't go running anymore. What am I going to do? So I decided to join a gym. Joined a gym at the time I was living in Luton, so I joined LA Fitness in Luton. Had an induction, was absolutely terrified. The guy that did my induction basically told me to do 5,000 meters on a rowing machine every single day. And I was like, oh, great, okay. So then I started doing that. That was literally my induction at the gym. Didn't go near the weights. And then I started going to classes at the gym. So I started doing things like aerobics, body combat, and I really, really enjoyed those. And I was doing those for several years. So I was a right cardio bunny. Every single class was just cardio. And then eventually I got very friendly with one of the instructors, and she encouraged me to go and get qualified as an instructor, which I did. And that was around 2007. So I got qualified to teach a lot of Les Mills classes. I became a spin instructor. Again, still hadn't hit any weights. My first introduction to doing weights was body pump, Les Mills body pump. And I did that for a little while. And I decided to leave my job as cabin crew to become a full-time aerobics instructor. So I thought, this is a great idea. I can earn the same amount of money by teaching 25 classes a week, I worked out. So I can leave my job at EasyJet and I can just go and be an aerobics instructor, which obviously sounds great on paper, but when you're actually doing all the aerobics classes, you become pretty knackered quite quickly. So I would burn out every 3 months and have to spend a couple of days in bed. I was permanently aching. I was permanently tired and sore, and my diet wasn't very good at that point in time. I'd been a vegetarian for a long, long time, and literally all I ate was pizza and pasta. I didn't really have any protein in my diet at all. I knew nothing about that at that stage in my life. And the same girl that introduced me to becoming an aerobics instructor suggested that I became a personal trainer to kind of ease off the workload, so that I could give my body a bit of a rest in between teaching classes. So I went and did that, and that was my first introduction at that point, so 2007, to any sort of weight training. But I decided naively that probably wasn't really for me. And I carried on doing all the cardio and stuff that I was doing, and all my classes still. Was doing a few clients, but then ended up, as I alluded to earlier, sort of falling into gym management. So I worked my way up through various gym chains. I worked as an assistant manager, club manager, and then I became a training manager for my last company that was Easy Gym. But in 2012, I was working as club manager for Easy Gym in Wood Green, which was a massive club in a not very nice area. And I had a team of about 10 personal trainers that worked for me. And it was one of the personal trainers that suggested I come and did a weight session with him. And I was like, yeah, all right, cool, I'll do that. And he put me through a really, really brutal leg session. He fancied himself as a bit of a bodybuilder. And yeah, he absolutely killed me. And he was going around all the staff, like doing a really intense session with them. And I was the only one that didn't give up. So I was the only one that really enjoyed it and was still pretty much standing or hadn't been sick at the end of it. And so he was at the end quite impressed, and he said, I think you could do bodybuilding. And I was like, oh, well, I'd quite like to do that actually, because a couple of people I'd known had done it. One of them actually worked for me at the time, who you'll know as Suki Harris. So she was one of my class instructors at the gym at that point, and she'd competed already. And I was like, oh well, yeah, why not? I'll give it a go. And he said, oh well, have a look for some competitions, and I'll do it with you. I'll train you. I'll write all your diet, and I'll prep you for a competition. And I was like, cool. So I went away. I had a bit of a search online, and I found a competition which was the WNBF Centrals that year, so 2012, and it was in 11 weeks time. It was 11 and a half weeks time. And I came back to Adam, who was the PT at my gym, and I said, all right, Adam, I found this competition. What do you reckon? Is that like going to be enough time? And he was like, yep, training starts on Monday. And I did it. I ended up, so that was like, I hadn't really done until that point any weight training at all. And then 11 and a half weeks later, I entered my first competition. And I actually did all right. I placed fourth. So that's 2012 was literally the first time.
Lucy?
What was I teaching?
No, it was in the class at the BNBF.
Oh, I did figure. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I did figure. There was probably, I think there was 8 people or something like that in the category, and I ended up placing 4th. And that was it. That was kind of where my love for bodybuilding started. And it was a horrible prep. Obviously, like 11 and a half weeks is nothing. And it was very, very grueling, and neither of us really knew what we were doing, to be honest, at that point in time. He's still a good friend of mine now, but I'm sure he'd say on reflection that he had no idea what he was doing prepping me. I was on very low calories, and most of the days I was coming in to train half dead. But yeah, I swore at the end of it, I was like, that was the worst thing I'd ever done. I was never ever going to do it again, ever. And then 3 months later, I was prepping for my next season of competitions in 2013.
Did you respond, just one more question before we move on, did you respond quite well to weight training then, Lucy, if you were able to sort of, do a diet straight away and they get on stage, do relatively well? Did you think that you had a fairly decent response to weight training when you did pick it up?
Yeah, I think I definitely did. I mean, obviously, it's not that I'd done no training. I was always, at that point, I'd been teaching classes since 2007. So several years of teaching classes, even though none of them were really weight-based apart from body pump. But yeah, very quickly, I definitely still gained a bit of muscle in that very short space of time. And yeah, did respond very well. And I that is clearly my genetics, and yeah, the type of training I did respond to, definitely.
Great. So before I move the mic to Lee and he can ask some questions for you guys, Michelle, I wanted you to give us a little bit of background on your competition history, where you got started, and I'd also like you to try and intertwine that question to the point of trying to find your class and find where you land. So if you could just sort of take us through a little bit of your background with shows, where you started, and then where you've kind of ended up a little bit.
Okay, so I did my first show in September 2016, and that was with UKBFF. Had, like I said, it was my first show. Had absolutely no idea what to expect. Hadn't been to a bodybuilding show before, but thought, yeah, I want to do bodybuilding. So I entered as a figure competitor. Absolutely loved every moment of the day. Got on that stage and just knew that this was my calling. I didn't place. I think there were 5 competitors, and I came fourth or fifth. I can't remember, but I remember coming off the stage and thinking, I've got to do that again. So that first prep was my friend who just recently qualified as a personal trainer, and she had actually competed herself. So I said, well, would you mind prepping me? I didn't know about prep coaches or anything. I just thought, I'm going to get her to do it. How difficult can it be? So give her credit. She did quite well with me. She brought me down slowly. I probably was one of the most grumpiest people you could ever come across when it got to the really late stages where there was nothing left to me. How I was able to function, I don't know. I was training on very low calories, having to go to work. I remember the week before the competition, I literally went into work on Monday and I didn't return until after the competition because I just had no energy whatsoever. If I went into work on Tuesday, I would have killed someone. It was that bad. Just talking to me, I'd snap and just bite your head off. So anyway, I remember traveling up to Birmingham, doing that competition, coming away, not placing. Then I started looking into a little bit more about bodybuilding. Like I said, I had no idea what was what. Didn't know that natural federations existed. Then got in contact with a coach who actually had coached previous athletes with the BNBF. So I started training with him in January 2017. And at the time, I said to him, oh yeah, I want to do a show in August, September time. And he said to me, no, actually, we're going to see how you progress with your training, because we need to put a little bit of muscle on you. So, because I showed him my competition pictures and he couldn't believe that I did figure, because I actually looked like I was ready to do bikini. That's how small I had got for that competition. But it was fine. He just wanted to take me through my paces, build my calories up and get some muscle on me. So we started training in January. By March, I started seeing some progression in shape. My shape started to change. I remember having a conversation with him where he was giving me, I think it was maybe 2,200 calories, and my carbs were 250. And I remember just having a proper fit, just saying, I can't eat 250 grams of carbs. Are you crazy? And then 3 months later, I was like 400 grams of carbs, give me more carbs. Then I remember receiving a call from him on the 1st of May, and he just said, I think you're ready to do a show, pick a show. So I did. I picked the BNBF Midlands show that was in August. So we had like 3 months to do the prep, did that, went along to the Midlands show and competed as a figure competitor in the master category. And I won, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. It was just such an amazing feeling. Considering it was my first natural show and I didn't know what to really expect, it was a surprise to me when they said that you had an invitation to the British finals. Didn't even know those things existed. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. Prep continues. So went back into continuing my prep, and that was probably about another 9 weeks. Competed at the BNBF British finals in the October, and I won. And again, it was a real surprise to me when they said that you got an invitation to the world finals. Like, what the heck? What? There's a world finals? Okay. But I didn't really think about it, because they then said to me, you can't leave because you've got to come back on and do the overalls. Again, I had no clue that all these things took place. I had literally gone along very innocently. And so I had to compete against Steph Noble. And so I remember watching her backstage warming up, because I was kept backstage as well. And I remember watching her thinking, my God, she looks phenomenal. You know, her whole physique, and just looking at her, she just really stood out for me. And then I realized I had to go on stage with her. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, we went on and we had to do our quarter turns and what have you. And it was just such an amazing experience. And I remember coming, and she got the overall, and she got her pro card then. And I remember being backstage with her and just seeing the jubilation on her face at receiving her pro card. And just there in that moment, I had a true understanding of what bodybuilding meant to me, and it just opened my eyes to what my potential could be and where I could potentially go. And it was there that I thought, right, I'm going to go and do these world finals. I don't know how I'm going to fund it, but I'll do it. So I got home. As soon as I got home, a friend of mine got in contact with me and just said, oh, do a GoFundMe page. So I did that, raised money, went off to Miami, competed with the DFAC at the DFAC finals, world finals, and got master figure winner there and the overall. So for me, that was just like a great accomplishment in my first year of competing, just like, and a pro card as well. So I remember coming away thinking, oh my God, I can't believe all of that's happened in just my first year of competing. So obviously, because I got the pro card, I then couldn't compete as an amateur with the WNBF anymore. So then I started investigating other federations and came across the UK DFBA. So looked up their rules. Well, not completely. If I had, I would be. What happened wouldn't have happened. But yeah, so I just read up on figure and thought, right, I'm going to do that show. Started my prep, went along in August, I believe it was, and went on stage and competed. And I came third. And I just thought, at the time, I thought to myself, well, that's fine, you know, just accept it as it is, because the judges are there to judge you, and get judges' feedback and find out, you know, what you need to do differently, perhaps. Came off stage and AJ was waiting for me backstage and just said, oh, don't disappear. The judges want to speak to you. I believe that you're in the wrong category. And no sooner had I walked backstage, Mark Oates was waiting for me and just said, oh, you're in the wrong category. You should have really, you don't fit the criteria for figure for this federation. We believe that you should be in the women's bodybuilding. Would you like to come back and compete at a later date at another show? So I sat there, and it was all like a whirlwind for me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not a figure girl. What do you mean I'm not a figure girl? I've been training to be a figure girl. What's a women's bodybuilder? And I had all these things going through my mind. And so he goes, I'll leave you to think about it, but we really would like to see you come back and do a show at a later date. 10 minutes later, Lee comes along and and says, Michelle, how would you feel about coming back on stage today? You can't be judged, but we can compare you against the other women bodybuilders to see whether we would have invited you to the British finals. So I was like, oh my God, yeah, great, yeah, I'll do it. But I don't know how to pose. And literally in the space of 10 minutes, Lee showed me how to do the quarter turns. It was hilarious. I was just like, oh my God. Then I quickly whipped backstage. I'd got undressed as well. So I had to go backstage, get dressed again, try and do these quarter turns and go back on stage. So I went back on stage with my flip-flops on. So I walked on the stage, walked across, and I thought, oh my God, shit, I've got my flip-flops on. I had to quickly kick them to the side.
I actually remember that.
It was hilarious. It was just like a comedy act. But I really enjoyed myself. When you look back at the pictures, it was just evident that I had no clue what I was doing. I had my hands open in the front double bicep pose, and it was just hilarious. But I did get the invitation to the British finals, and so it just meant that I had to come away from that competition and rejig my my prep I had to prep to be a bodybuilder. And it really took me a long time to get my head around that, because I've been learning about figure, the poses and everything. And then I got in contact with Steph Noble to do posing. So I met with her and she went through all the mandatories, and I found it very difficult. I found it very, very difficult. And I'm going to be honest, I still find it difficult. It's a work in progress. It's doing those poses not easy whatsoever. You really do have to practice, and you have to practice all the time. Anyway, went to the British finals, and what an experience. Thoroughly enjoyed the day. Everything about from the moment you turned up to getting on that stage, it was just one of the experiences I will always remember. The ambience was just great. Everyone there was really very friendly. I remember falling asleep doing my polygraph test. Don't ask me how, but I became so relaxed that I was snoring. So they'd ask you a question, and you don't respond, you respond up here. And I got so relaxed in responding that I was like literally snoring. So at the end, I said to the guy, I goes, was I snoring? He goes, yeah. I was like, oh God, how embarrassing. But yeah, so went on stage, competed with the other girls. And I remember being there, and Joe Barrett was stood next to me, and we were the last two on stage. And Lee said that, I think there was only 1 point between us or something like that. I can't remember. I stopped breathing, and there's actually a picture of me where you can see that I had actually stopped breathing. And then they announced Joe's name, and then I couldn't believe it. It was just it was an amazing feeling. It's just one of those moments where you'll always remember it for that moment, for being there and just realizing what you had accomplished. So then I got invited to the World Finals and went to LA with the UK team and competed. And again, another great trip. It was just, it was brilliant. From the minute we got to the airport to coming back home, every single moment of that trip was just brilliant. And just being on that world stage was just amazing. So I won there in 2018 and also was awarded my pro card in women's bodybuilding. And in 2019, I would say was my best year of competing. And the reason why I say that is because I learned a lot along the way. I competed with the UK DFBA at the UK Championships in October 2019 and placed third. And I think for me, this was a great experience, because when you're always winning, you don't really know how good you are. So you have nothing to compare yourself against. So then when I went to the did my first pro show with the UK DFBA, that there, in that moment, just showed me where I stood among some of the best bodybuilders, women bodybuilders there are. And so for me, I came away from that, and I had to do a lot of reflection, really. It really made me have to look at myself and question myself and my prep and lots of other things. But I didn't let it deter me. I thought, right, I'm going to get back into prep, and we're going to go off to New York and compete. Did the Worlds, and yeah, that was a real eye-opener. I remember being backstage and seeing all the women lined up, and I was like, wow, this is what the pro league is about. It really is. It was amazing. And I came 7th there. And again, I got the placing that I deserved, and rightly so, because when you look at the other women up there, you could see that they had years and years and years of experience. Their bodies spoke volumes, and I'm very new to this. And I hope that in years to come, I too will be able to really, really earn my place up there with those women. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, awesome. So yeah, thank you for the journey there. I want to sort of go through that a little bit, just to give listeners an idea of how you've moved up categories. I know that you did start in figure, and you were very much that figure figure girl wanting to be in that category, very similar sort of Danny Carr, how she was quite emotionally attached to that category itself and quite reluctant to change to women's bodybuilding. And I think that's an interesting one. I don't know whether your opinions on that was that you were, I don't know, reluctant to be of that level of muscularity and you preferred the shape and the flow of figure, or what was making you reluctant to maybe be in that class, or did you just not realize it?
One, I didn't realize it, and I didn't realize, obviously I didn't realize in the moment, but when I got the professional photos back and was looking at them, I saw what obviously the judges saw and thought, my God, yeah, Michelle, yeah, you're not a figure girl. You're not a figure girl at all. There's too much there. You're too big. You got the shape, but the muscle growth was a lot more. But as I said, I found it hard to do that transition from figure, because I missed the heels and I missed being dainty on stage. And whilst I really do enjoy the women's bodybuilding, it requires a lot more, I believe. And I haven't got there yet. And I'm hoping over time, I will get there and be able to bring that figure and that body to the stage that I believe is necessary for women's bodybuilding.
Yeah, awesome. Lee, I'll let you take the mic for a little bit. You haven't really chatted this podcast yet, so you can take over with any of the questions that you have.
No, I'm all good. That clears everything up, mate. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next week. So I'm gonna have to waffle for a minute because I've just had about all 10 of my questions answered already. To be honest, good. It's good. It's good. It saves me from having to talk. I normally do too much of that. You saw my fist pump about 5 minutes ago, by the way. I knew one of you would swear during the podcast.
Hope it wasn't me.
One down, one to go.
I don't know who it was. It was probably me.
I don't think we've ever had a guest on who hasn't sworn yet, so don't let us down. But one of you's got to get a rude word in before we finish.
Okay, deal.
Both of you, I mean, both of you have had well experienced careers now. I know you haven't been into the sport for a long time in terms of sort of years and decades, but you both competed at basically from first timer level up to the top pro level in the world. And on the way, you've both switched divisions. And I have a big belief when it comes to female athletes that, you know, like I said in one of my earlier podcasts with AJ, is that the division picks you. It doesn't work the other way around. And we've got this big trend at the moment of people who are, you know, it happens commonly. There was a listener question just a couple of weeks ago, which I won't single out to just that person because it happens to a lot of people. They actually want us to change the criteria of the classes rather than jump to the class that they belong in themselves. It's really, really common. How did you both feel about accepting the need to move up to more muscular classes, if you get what I mean? Lucy, you first.
I think, well, my feedback from the last time I competed at the WNBF, so when I competed again in 2013, I actually was up at that point in time. I did the WNBF Welsh in 2013, and I actually placed second in figure to Rhiannon Ahern, who's now
our UK bikini champion.
Yes. And I went backstage and I asked for some feedback, and I was told at that point in time from them that they didn't really think I was a figure competitor and that I would suit. I don't think they had the athletic class then. Or they might have called it something else at that point in time. I can't remember, but I was basically told that they didn't think I had the shape of a figure competitor. So from that feedback, I was obviously a little bit disappointed. In that same year, I, however, also competed with the NPA, and that was also my first year competing with the UK DFBA as well. And at that point in time, you only had the fit body category, didn't you?
That's right, yeah.
So I kind of just didn't really, to be honest, at that point in time, like Michelle said, you know, I wasn't really sure fully what I was letting myself in for. I kind of did this, oh, I'll go and try that, and I'll go and try that. And so I was finding my feet, I guess, a little bit with it all. In my qualify for the MPA, I actually won, and I think you might have even been at that show, Lee.
I might have even been on the judging panel. It was
I think you were judging,
yes.
Yeah. So I did win. So I was kind of like, okay, well, you know, I've had that feedback from one federation, but the MPA, I'm in the figure category still, and I've managed to win, so that's good. So again, a bit like Michelle said, it's almost a bit confusing at that point of time, because one place was saying one thing and the MPA said another, because I'd managed to win. And then I competed in fit body with the UK DFBA, and I believe at that point in time we just had the one show, didn't we? There was no qualifiers.
That was it, yeah, just the open show. That was the first year we were at Leamington 13 at the old concert venue.
Yes, and I think, did I place second or third? Maybe third.
You were third. Steph Noble won, and Danny Carr was second.
So I was third in that show.
No, sorry. You were third. Was Heather Oakes second?
Heather Oakes did Heather Oakes win, or was no? Yeah, you're right. Steph Noble won.
Steph won. Steph definitely won. I think Heather was second. You were third.
Heather was second. I was third. Or yeah, definitely. I think that's right. And then yes, so at that point in time, I was kind of a bit unsure, really, where I placed and really the differences between the two categories at that point in time. And then it was at the end of 2013 that I met Gavin Gibson. So he actually contacted me after he saw me at the NPA show, the one that you judged. And he asked a little bit about where, because he saw that I lived at the time in Luton and he lived not too far away. He asked who I was being coached by. And at that point in time, I wasn't really being coached at all. I was writing my own terrible diet plans. And I was just having like sessions with a PT at my local gym that didn't really know that much about bodybuilding. I was literally just winging it. And he got chatting to me. He invited me to go over and have a session with him. And it was kind of him at that point, really. So I finished my 2013 season, and then I decided that I wanted to then be prepped and do things properly for once with Gavin. Because I've had a good rapport with him. He absolutely killed me. I think when I went to train with him for the first time, we did something like a 2.5 hour leg session. And then I had to go to Brighton to watch Mumford & Sons in concert, and I couldn't stand up. I had to sit down the whole time of that concert. But yeah, so that was when my relationship with him happened, and it was kind of him that then sort of led my journey from there. So that was then in 2014 when I did start winning shows, and eventually at the end of 2014 was when I did the UK DFBA show in fit body again, and then I was lucky enough to get my pro card, and that's kind of then when I was like, okay, this is where I sit, and this is where I belong. But I do remember, however, that year prior to that show, prior to the UK DFBA championships, I remember a lot of people hearing that I was prepping with Gavin, because he was known as a bit of a condition king for how he prepped himself, and a lot of them were like, don't get too lean, don't get too lean, don't let him prep you like a bodybuilder, don't get too lean. But actually that condition that I did manage to get suited me perfectly well for fit body, and therefore I ended up doing very well that year.
Yeah, you did very well that year. You won our UK championships, then you came back the next day, won our international championships, because they used to be two separate shows, didn't they, back to back? And then he took you out to Boston further world.
Yeah.
You got third in the Pro Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So was there any hardship for you before we move over to Michelle's answer? Was there any hardship for you in making that switch to accepting that you belonged in a more muscular class, or was it something you were just happy to go with?
I was happy to go with it. I wouldn't want to train any differently. Like, I love how I train. I love the intensity of how I train. And my body has just grown and has just changed with the type of training and the intensity of training that I've been doing. So, and I wouldn't. I'd quite like to do bikini. I'd quite like to do a bikini category, but there's just no way I suit that category. And you have to, as you mentioned on another podcast, that you just have to go with where you suit. Like, your body shape and your muscle size is going to determine that.
So how about you then, Michelle? I mean, obviously you've covered the day you came to us as a figure contestant. The day you turned around to the back, and I thought, Jesus. I mean,
is that when AJ swore?
Probably, yeah. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Michelle Lawrence has got arguably the best back development of any active female competitor out there these days. Incredible, a killer back double bicep shot, in loads of shoulder width, loads of muscle. She looks absolutely incredible from the back. We said straight away, this is going to be one of those heartbreaking days when somebody who's got an incredible physique and has obviously put a lot of work and has a lot of natural talent is going to end up coming last, because that's just not what we're looking for. We spoke about that in an earlier podcast as well. Then we had the conversation, obviously, outside in the interval about you coming back and trying the bodybuilding. And I remember that. I remember sort of and saying, just do the best you can, and we'll see how you get on. And to be fair, you acquitted yourself incredibly well. You posed very well.
Bad.
But that sort of realization that you were just too, and I'll be straight out there. You were just too good to be a figure competitor. You know, your physique was light years ahead of what you need to look like to be a figure competitor. You were far advanced of that. How did it feel to you to sort of accept that and move with it? And I know you've kind of partially answered the question in terms of the steep upward learning curve and sort of going up that standard into the professionals eventually. But personally, how did it feel to you?
Okay, so I'm going to be truthful. Again, as I said, I didn't have much knowledge of bodybuilding. And when I think of women bodybuilders, I think of the really big, hench, steroid-taking bodybuilders. And that's the first image that came to my mind. Like, oh my God, they want me to do bodybuilding. I don't want to look that big. I'm going to lose my femininity. Loads of things were going through my mind. But then I started doing a little bit of research and looking at past winners, and I was like, okay, I see where they're going with this. But what I didn't also realise was that from 2016 to 2018, how much I had developed. If you saw my picture when I first competed in 2016, I looked like a bikini competitor. Then if you look at my pictures at the DFAC World Finals, I have grown a little bit. So from 2017 to 2018, obviously having a very, very good improvement season. I was eating well, I was training hard, I packed on a load of muscle. I was very new to bodybuilding, so it was my prime time to really grow, and I did grow. So stripping down and coming to your show, and obviously you seeing that I didn't fit that category, and then me coming away reviewing my pictures and thinking, well, maybe they do have a point. And I can see that if you, and again, as I said, when I looked at the professional photos and I saw me and then I saw the other competitors, I got it. And it was hard to digest that first because, as I said, I really wanted to be a figure girl. I didn't want to transition into women bodybuilding. But once I got my head around that, I embraced it because it just meant that I could lift heavier, I could train harder, and I could eat more food within reason. But it just meant that I could continue to build. And I just started, just the training intensified, and the training was more focused towards women, to the bodybuilding category. And like I said, it's a work in progress, but I love the category now. And there's so many. Last year at the amateur show, in all truthfulness, I say, if that had been 2018 when I competed, how would I have done? Because I have never ever seen a lineup like I did with the amateurs. It was just phenomenal. The women up there were really, really very good. And I remember sitting there thinking, Michelle, if that had been your lineup, how would you have done? In all honesty.
It's a good question. I mean, it's one of those what ifs that we'll never know, isn't it? You weren't at the UK show in October last year. I'm right in saying you weren't quite at your peak of your season.
No.
Yeah, you were shooting for the Worlds. Yeah, you'd have been in your peak condition. You know, the shape you're in October 18 when you won our amateur championships to go to the Worlds. I don't think you'd have been disappointed with how you did that show. I think you were one place apart from the girl who won it, both at our pro show and at the Pro Worlds. I think Mariana was second to your third at our show, and then sixth to your seventh at the Worlds. You were up there. You were very close to that standard anyway. But do you remember? I mean, I always have to be really impartial till the end of our bodybuilding season, you know. And when we get on the plane to go to the Worlds, it's a kettle of fish. I'm one of the guys. Then, you know, I'm there with the team. And do you remember one of my? I talked about it last week, and I'll come on to it in a minute for you guys. But yeah, the moments you remember in bodybuilding. And I remember you coming from the backstage door at the side of the venue in LA.
Oh God, yeah.
And we had a big hug, and you were crying, and I said, "I told you, I told you were a bodybuilder."
Yeah,
because you just won the Worlds. That is one of the moments I will always remember. It was myself and Lorraine Hills. That's right.
And you were standing there, and I remember I just came out, and I think I gave you the biggest hug ever, and I just started crying. I think I made you cry as well.
No, definitely not.
He was crying.
There was something in my eye.
But it was a really special moment for me. I remember saying to you, Lee, thank you so much. I would never have imagined that I would be a pro women's bodybuilder. It was just not something that when I started my journey, that I envisaged. I envisaged going back to the DFAC World Finals, competed as a pro figure athlete, and I'll never do that now. I just couldn't go back. I love this category. It is me.
Cool. And there was something that we alluded to earlier. I can't remember who it was who said it in their input about their early days as a figure competitor. There was something that I actually find befuddling, and I can challenge it because it wasn't me that said it. Certainly wasn't feedback I gave either of you. Somebody said you didn't have the shape to be a figure competitor, and that always confuses me because the sort of basic shape of a figure competitor is the same shape as a fit body competitor or a bodybuilder. Who, as I explained when I was going through judging criteria previously, bikini, the sort of natural body shape of a good bikini competitor is a little bit different. But once you start getting that sort of wide-shouldered, V-tapered look, it's pretty much the same shape you need for all three of the next disciplines, just more muscle size. And if you've got a propensity to gain that size, then sure, move up another class. But that's confusing feedback. I think it might have been Lucy that was giving it after the show in Wales where she placed second to Ree. She didn't have the shape to be a figure competitor. That's odd feedback. Not that I'm a big fan of feedback ananyway. Is Lucy still here, eh?
She's got fed up and gone.
She
disappeared.
I was just about to ask her a really good question as well. Oh well.
Oh dear. No, she said that. I'm sorry, anyone that's listening that. But yeah, the signal's gone on Lucy. So if you were watching the video, you would have seen Lucy freeze and then and then disappear. So she's trying to get back in. If she can get back in, obviously we'll continue with Lucy. But I've got a question for Michelle to keep things running. So obviously you've gained a lot of muscle. You have a crazy back development, especially, but you have, crazy muscularity all over. So what would you say is like some of your key fundamental things that you consider when it comes to like just growing muscle, especially as a female? How does it look when it, you look at your training, you look at nutrition and putting that all together? What would you say is the advice you would give to people looking to pack on as much size as they can?
Okay, so the first thing I would address is nutrition. It's key. It is absolutely key. Have to nail your diet. I would say I eat pretty much like a robot. I'm quite happy in prep season and off season to eat the same foods all the time, giving my macros, my calories, and I just prep my foods to hit those every single day. It's imperative, because the reason I say that, when I first started bodybuilding and really started with my weight training, got shingles 3 times in 1 year. The first time I didn't know I had shingles, and I remember going into work and training in the evening. I did legs, and I just couldn't shake that horrible feeling in my legs. Like, I trained legs a week ago. Why are my legs still hurting me? Like a really horrible numb feeling. Anyway, went to the doctors. I had shingles, was signed off work for 2 weeks. But it got worse because I didn't get it in time. I ended up going to the hospital because I just kept getting this horrible shooting sensation in my toes, and it just traveled up my legs, and it just paralyzed me completely. So anyway, I had to phone a friend, took me to hospital, and I was put on medication. So did that, was off work for 2 weeks, went back into training, started looking a little bit more at my diet, because my diet wasn't great at the time. So started looking at that, and my supplements. I wasn't taking that many supplements at the time. Got shingles again. 2 months later, got shingles again. I thought, right, I recognise the symptoms. Let me just go straight to the doctors, get the medication. Did that. 3 months later, got shingles once again. Michelle, you really have to sort this out. And I did. I made sure that I was eating correctly. I was hydrating correctly, and I was taking my supplements, basics, vitamin C, my B vitamins, and a multivitamin, and they seem to help quite a lot. I started taking maca root as well, and evening primrose, just those ones. And then my training changed quite a lot. As I said, I really had arguments with my coach initially, because he was saying that I needed to eat more food, and I wasn't used to eating so much sweet potato or rice. It was just unseen, unheard of. Why would I be eating so much food? But then I started to recognize that it was imperative, and if I wanted to lift big and heavy, then I needed to eat well. So getting in the gym and just progressing my lifts really for I would say I stick to the staples: pull-ups for my back, deadlifts, squats, just the basics, keep it simple, and sleep, getting home and recovering really well, and I had Sebastian was very young at the time. So I had to get into a really good routine of getting home, doing mum, but also making sure that I got into bed at a certain time, because if I didn't, then it just meant that I wasn't recovering well. And I tried to get to bed by 9 o'clock so I could get at least a good 9 hours sleep before I repeat the whole process. So yeah, just, you have to eat well, drink plenty of water, take your supplements if that's what you need, and train hard and with intensity. I love being in the gym, and I love training hard. And it's funny because people will see me there and think I'm quite antisocial, but it's not. It's just the gym is my time to just be me. I don't have to be mum, don't have to be a friend, sister. I can just be a little selfish with my time and just concentrate on doing something that I really enjoy.
Fantastic. And what would you say are your go-to movements for back? I know I've seen you deadlifting fairly frequently with decent load. Would you say that that's one of your main players in your back development? Any other movements that you found are really good for growing your back to the extent that you have?
Yeah, I'd say pull-ups. Like literally, if anyone were to say to me, how did you progress? It was with pull-ups. So I started with pull-ups, then transitioned into weighted pull-ups, deadlifts, T-bar rows with chest supported T-bar rows. God, what else do I do? Those are my three main movements, and lat pull down.
Sure. Yeah. And in your off seasons themselves, a lot of females really struggle with weight gain, really struggle with pushing their body weights up. I know when we met in Birmingham, we had that pool session. You were telling me how, you know, you felt like you were getting a bit softer, and you got to that point where, you know, you're kind of transitioning away from the condition and seeing some condition in your physique in favor for the new muscle that you were gaining. Have you ever come across that obstacle, that like difficulty of gaining weight? Have you found it quite hard to see the condition fade, and how have you dealt with that?
Right, so I would say my first year of competing, I didn't really have an idea of how to reverse out. So I came off stage and I literally just ate like a pig, like literally I was eating everything I could. So not a very good example. So my first off season wasn't very good, and I just put on loads of weight. I'd probably say I went up about 10 kilos over my stage weight, but just thought that was normal. It wasn't until I competed the second year that it was a bit more of a problem for me, because obviously I got used to being quite lean, and I liked that look. I liked being able to see my muscle definition. So after coming back from Miami and transitioning out of prep and into my improvement season, I did find it a bit difficult. But it's important at that time to make sure you have people around you who can give you a good message that it is important to make sure you reverse out properly, particularly as a woman, because it's important that your hormones come back to normal, and that you're eating enough food to enable this to happen. And yeah, it was hard, but as I started to feel normal again and recognize this for myself, it made it a lot easier. So yeah, and for me, I think the important thing is just to make sure I don't go too much over my stage weight. At the moment, I'm 8 kilos over stage weight, and I'm happy with that. I can progress as I need to in the gym, but also not get too heavy, because otherwise it will just make it too difficult when it comes to prepping. Once again, I don't want to have to go. Nobody wants to go through that again.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic. Lee, have you got any of your trivia questions that you are wanting to throw into the mix?
Yeah.
We'd like to get Lucy's answers, but
Is she?
seems to be disappeared and not returning.
I'll email Lucy the questions and post her answers on Facebook. We'll be okay. So the three questions I asked the guys on the podcast last week, and they were pretty much off the cuff questions that came off the top of my head, but I kind of liked all three of them. So I'm gonna keep them in as regulars for guests, I think, every time I get the chance to come on and talk to people. So the big three. First one, funniest thing you've ever seen at a bodybuilding contest?
Yeah, it was my first competition. Like I said, I had never been to a bodybuilding competition before, and it was at the WNBF Midlands show. And I found it really weird that some of the guys were sat backstage drinking brandy. Like, what the heck? This is a bodybuilding competition. Why are you drinking brandy? So one of the guys was just sitting there, like literally drinking this brandy. And then they got called to go on stage. and he could just about walk up the stairs. It was just hilarious, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd been in the audience actually to see just how he'd done on the stage. But I mean, it wasn't a small bottle; it was a big bottle, and they were just back there swigging on this brandy, and then just went on. And I was just like, wow, is that the norm? Should I be drinking brandy myself? Like, no, better not.
Yeah, apparently it makes your veins pop out. It's a massive old wives' tale. It just gets people drunk and makes them look silly on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we might have Lucy back.
I've just seen her pirouetting around the living room trying to find a good signal with things spinning around in the background. It didn't get me motion sickness.
I hope I'm now back for good. Sorry about that, guys.
Let's fire the first of my trivia, my off the cuff questions at you, then, Lucy, before you disappear again. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen at a bodybuilding contest?
There's been a couple. Well, one of them involved me. Another one was me watching other people. So this one was, AJ might actually remember this. So 2016 NBA British finals in Brighton. We'd done all the pre-judging. In fact, both these stories are the same show. So we'd done all our pre-judging, and then we had to go on. I think in the evening they made us go on again, and we were doing routines. And I had a fairly dancey routine. I wasn't about to do the splits or anything like that. But anyhow, I needed a nervous wee before I went on to do my routine. And then whoever it was, it might have even been AJ himself, because he was helping out, I'm sure, at that show, and called us to line up backstage. Went for my nervous wee, and the connectors on the side of my bikini snapped.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
Can you remember? Yeah. So literally getting lined up to go on stage, and my bikini had completely detached on one side. Completely. And I was just like, oh my God. I was in the toilet, and some of the other girls were there with me, and I was like, girls, help. And luckily, like, someone managed to find a safety pin from somewhere, and helped me kind of, with a single safety pin, fix my bikini like back together. And then I had to use my number badge to then fix it and hide the safety pin to my side. And then the whole of my routine, I was just absolutely terrified that it was going to snap again. So I was being really, really extra cautious with my routine, not to like do any like over exuberant kicks or anything like that, just to like keep my legs as close together as possible, so I didn't put any tension on the side of the bikini. And then at the very same show, I think I missed probably like a good 10 minutes there, didn't I, when my signal went. But I think it might be similar to what I heard Michelle talking about, is that at the same show, there was a couple of girls. The show did go on a very, very, very long time.
They tend to.
Yeah. It was very late. AJ will remember, I'm sure I was still on stage at like close to midnight on that particular show.
The only shows I've ever seen in my life that get 50 people in them and still run for 14 hours. I never got it, but carry on, sorry.
But there's these two girls that were competing in my category that proceeded to, like, so they'd obviously been told by their coaches, presumably, to have like a glass of wine before they went on stage. But this glass of wine that they drank turned into, I reckon, 3 bottles that they got through, and they were getting louder and louder, more and more pissed. And sure enough, by the time
that's two. That's both, yeah. We're in. No, it was Michelle the first time.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So we're done.
Yes. So by the time they got on stage, like, bearing in mind we wear quite big heels, don't we, on stage? The figure and fit body girls, they were barely still able to stand still. Put it that way. It was rather amusing to watch.
I've actually got a little story to tell from the DFA World Finals. I completely forgot about it, and it's only because Lucy was talking about her bikini. But I remember being up on the stage doing quarter turns, and the judge said, could contestant 101 please adjust their bra? So I'm standing there. I think I was doing a front double bicep, I can't remember. And my bra had literally lifted up and had exposed my boob. And they kept saying, could contestant 101 please fix their bra? And I looked down and thought, oh, that's me.
Oh, nearly another one.
It was so embarrassing. I literally had to turn around, readjust myself, and then hit the pose back. And I was, oh my God. So because the show was split in two, I went back to the hotel and changed my bikini for the evening show because I thought that cannot happen to me later.
Definitely always worth having a spare if you've got one. But in my case, there was no spare that time when it snapped. Just had to use the power of a safety pin. Yeah.
Right. Second question then. Michelle, back to Michelle first. Biggest gym fail?
I remember this. Oh gosh. I was at the gym early morning and there was probably about 3 other people in the gym and I was benching. So I just finished doing a really heavy set and then I sat up and I was getting my breath and I looked down and there was this spider on the floor and I let out the biggest scream ever. And I didn't think anyone heard me. And then and when I got to work, somebody sent me a message on Facebook saying this girl, they'd taken a picture of me and posted it and just said that this girl was benching, can't remember how much, and then lets out a scream. What was that all about? And then I had to explain myself and saying it's because I saw a little spider on the floor running around. It was just really embarrassing.
How about you, Lucy?
It wasn't really, well, maybe there's been a couple. There's definitely been one when I've been squatting and I've had to do an embarrassing sort of duck, like I haven't been able to get the rep and had to do an like embarrassing sort of slide from underneath the bar to get out and just hope no one's been looking. There's definitely been a couple of them. But once, this is probably just as I was getting into my bodybuilding days, so it was more of a, when I was still a bit of a cardio bunny, but I was training with a couple of guys and they were doing box jumps and we didn't have like a proper plyometric box. They were just piling steps, you know, the ones that have got the bricks, and then you put the step itself on top of the bricks, and they were piling them up and up, and I was just watching them thinking, wow, like this is incredible, they're doing such a good job. And they were just kept jumping, doing another one, jumping, and I was just like, wow. And they were like, come on, Luce, your turn. And I was like, no way. And they were like, come on, it's your turn. No, not a chance. I will not do it. And they basically kept going on and on. Come on, you can do it. Don't be a pussy. Just do it. Like really, really shouting at me. And I was like, okay. So I eventually agreed to do it. Was like, I think I took a bit of a run up to try and do it because that's almost what they were doing, and like my toes clipped the edge of the step, and then I did an almighty and just landed completely flat. I mean, it was far too, like these guys were both like probably nearly 6 foot, and there's me 5'2" trying to jump the same height as them. I was never ever in a million years going to make it, but I just landed with an almighty thud and crack on my back. I really did hurt myself. It really wasn't very nice, but it was also hilarious, and they couldn't control themselves for like a good 10 minutes laughing at me.
I could get that.
Yeah.
I could get that. And we all learned that plyometrics have no place in bodybuilding on that.
No, I would never ever do it ever again. And sometimes, like with my PT clients in the gym, if they see people doing it, they're always like, you're not going to make me do that, are you? And I would like, never in a million years will I make you do that. No.
Right, last question. I'm going to put some rules in for this question because I didn't last week. No contest wins, because that's low-hanging fruit. Everybody's happy when they win a contest. That's always a good memory for everybody, for the most part. Contest wins aside, starting with Michelle, what is your one? If you could take a split second of your time in the sport, a split second, take a photo of it, hang it on the wall, and that's your one big defining moment that you'd relive 1,000 times if you could. What's your Kodak moment?
No winning.
No winning.
I think being on stage and my boob coming out.
You would want that to happen again?
Yeah, as a lesson to others to make sure that you see your figure suit up properly. Don't do what Michelle done. No, Kodak moment. It wasn't actually on stage. It was on the morning of the DFA World Finals, and I was sharing with Gemini Lawton, and my son telephoned me from England and said, "Mum, I'm going to send you something. I don't want to talk to you just yet. I just want you to listen to it. Once you've listened to it, we talk." And it was a motivational speech, and it was something that I would do for him if he had exams in that. So to have received that from him, I literally sat in the apartment and I was blubbering. Like I couldn't stop crying. And then I remember Gemini coming over to me and saying, "Oh my God, Michelle, what's wrong? What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I was like, my son. And she's like, "What's wrong with him? What's wrong with your son?" And I said, "He's just sent me this really nice motivational speech." You should have seen her face, like, what? Like she couldn't believe why I was crying so much. But it was just, for me, in that moment, I couldn't have him there with me, but I then knew that I had to go and do my very best that day. And I just wish that I could have captured that moment for him to see the impact that his message had for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Who paid for that transatlantic phone call, by the way?
Mum.
How about you, Lucy? What's your split second in time?
Oh, I think I've got a couple, if that's allowed. My first one would be when we went in 2014 to Boston for my first pro show. And it was very, very early morning. I'm pretty sure Fit Body was the first category on.
It was, yeah, first class on.
So it was freezing as well, I seem to remember. And I'd had to pretty much sort of no one else was allowed backstage. So I'd made my way downstairs and was sort of in a room with all these other girls that I'd followed in the lead up to going there. And, you know, I'd followed them thinking, wow, these girls are pros and they're amazing. And then I was standing with them, next to them, talking to them. And I was just all a bit awestruck because these girls, in my mind, were just incredible athletes. And I couldn't believe that I was going up against them. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is the best. I love this. This is amazing. And all the sweat, blood and tears leading up to that moment was all worth it. And then my second one, I think, was when I did my first pro show back in the UK. Because I did in 2014 when I won the international show, because you'd invited me back the next day. None of my friends and family were expecting for that to have happened, so I had no one there. So when you gave me my pro card, I remember the only person in the audience were a few people that I knew from the bodybuilding world, and Coach Gavin at the time. So I remember it being an amazing moment, obviously, but I didn't have anyone there to see it. Whereas when I did the first pro show in 2016, which was in Coventry, I believe, at the university.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people that I didn't even necessarily even knew followed me or knew who I was. And when I went on stage, there was just so many people shouting my name, and people that I only had a handful of people there that I knew were there for me. But yeah, I had loads of people in the audience there supporting me and shouting for me. And that was just really, really nice to know that I had that. And I wasn't expecting it. So that was really, really lovely.
So that was the first pro figure. It was called figure, but it was kind of like a hybrid of figure and Fit Body. We still hit the podium.
Yes, yeah.
That was the first pro figure show in the UK that I know of.
Yes, yeah.
As far as I'm aware, we're the only sanctioning body that put pro divisions on for women outside of the US. I think there was one in Italy a few years But that aside, it was the first time, wasn't it? The first figure/fit body pro show in the UK. I remember that in 16. I was quite proud. Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up my 3 questions, AJ. Do you want to go on with some reader stuff or listener stuff, or have you got some more yourself?
Perfect. So I think I've covered pretty much most of the prudent questions from the listeners that I had, and I kind of intertwined them with what I asked Michelle and Lucy already with their journeys. Most of them were about the category switching. We had about 4 or 5 questions about how you guys have changed categories. And also we had a few questions about sort of building muscle as a female. I think we could do a whole separate podcast on hormones and things like that we could go into loads of different discussions on. So maybe we'll save that for another time. But I think for now, the podcast is around about an hour's in length. So we'll sort of try and keep it here so listeners can watch it all in one go and not have to separate it into parts. Finally, I'd like to just sort of, before we go into giving your social medias and making sure people follow you and give you a little bit of a platform there and make sure that people follow your journeys from now on. Lee, I know that you wanted to maybe mention a little bit about current situation with shows. Did you still want to do anything like that, or do you feel like...
Yeah, if that's okay. It's still a question that I'm getting asked an awful lot. No matter how many times I give the answer, people aren't believing me, and I don't know why. Still getting people entering contests. I had an entry come through just before I came on the podcast that I was in the middle of processing. That's why I was 5 minutes late on. Regardless of the situation in the UK at the minute, we have our shows planned. We have the Novice Championships planned for the 20th of September. We have the UK International Show planned for the weekend of the 17th and 18th of October. The only thing that will stop those shows from happening is the government physically saying that the venues are not allowed to open for those shows. It's that simple. A lot of people have said to me that there will be many people who can't compete this year because gyms aren't open, they don't have enough time to train and stuff like that. I do appreciate that. I get that. But there are also a lot of people who can train, and there are also a lot of people who do have the facilities to carry on with a contest prep. And I can't let those people down just because other people are in a fix. A good friend of mine up in the Faroe Islands, Jacob Jacobson, who may or may not listen to this podcast, said to me many years ago when he had some problems with a show and nearly all of the entrants dropped out within a couple of weeks before the show, and I was supposed to be flying up there to officiate it for him. And I said to him, are you still going to run your show, Jacob? And he said a very wise thing to me. He said, yes, because the bodybuilding show's always been run for the people who want to do it, not for the people who don't want to. And that's, and I know it's not a case of not wanting to. There are some people who can't, but the contest will always go ahead for the people who are there and able to do it. So we will not let you down. Outside of, like I say, venues physically not opening their doors for us, they will happen. The shows will happen, and we've got plans A, B, and C. Plan A is what we have now. Plan B, if it's a long time before gyms open, we may move the novice show date up to October. There are no definite plans to do that at the moment. If we can't hold a contest in October, we'll hold trials for the Worlds in whatever way we can. I spoke to Bob Bell and Tina Smith at the weekend. The Worlds is still going ahead in LA. I'm still going, and I'm still taking the team out to the Worlds with me. So we'll hold trials for a Worlds team. Those of you that are training, those of you that are dieting, those of you that are focused on this goal, keep focused on it, because something will happen for you this year. And it's a shame it won't happen for everybody, but we have to cater for the people who are still able to. And there was one person I wanted to give a really, really special mention to in this little bit. And people talk about, a lot of the time we talk about people that have inspired you to train, inspired you to compete, and inspired athletes. Well, us contest promoters get the occasional blast of inspiration as well. And mine has come from a lady that a lot of you will know. She is last year's UK Masters figure runner-up, Paula Christian Cox. Hello, Paula, if you're listening. Now, that lady's a frontline NHS worker. She's in nursing. She's working ridiculous hours. She sadly was infected with the coronavirus some time back. It took her off her feet for the best part of a month. And while she was on her backside recovering from it, she went on the internet and ordered a load of home gym equipment. She turned one of the rooms of her house into a little mini gym. And she's back up and at it. She's back at work. She's back training. And I spoke to her the other day, and she said, I want these shows to happen. These are my focus. This is a rotten world that we live in at the moment. I have to go out there and do this work, and I've had to get over this illness. And this is her pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And if anybody thinks that I'm going to let down people who've got that goal in mind, who this means that much to, that it's driving them day to day to carry on doing what they're doing, then they're very sadly mistaken. So, Paula, thank you very much for the inspiration, and I hope they open the doors of the Civic in October so you can go and do your thing on stage. So that's where we are with shows at the moment.
Awesome.
Right.
Fantastic stuff. So, yeah, Michelle, if you could list your sort of social media where people can follow you, so what your Instagram name is.
Michelle _A_Lawrence.
Awesome, cool. And Lucy, your business and your personal page, whatever you want people following.
My business page is Lucy Walton PT, and on Facebook it's Lucy Walton Personal Trainer. Website is currently pending, so yeah, follow me on there.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And for the listeners, thank you very much for listening as always. And we will be back next week with another episode. All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.